So welcome everyone. We're so glad that you could join us for another one of our sessions today. I'm Pam Gothard, Professional Learning Director with Social Studies School Service. It's a pleasure to have with us tonight Melissa Knowles. Melissa is one of our certified facilitators. She is certified in all of our products and works with us in the K-12 range. So it's just a pleasure to have Melissa on board tonight. Melissa, let me turn it over to you. And again, everyone, use that chat feature anytime you have a comment or question.
All right, great. Okay, so hi today. I am happy to be here. I have taught a range of grade levels. I'm now a librarian at a kindergarten focused school, pre-K and kindergarten. And so I'm really enjoying that, but it's been very different. That has been this year, and it has really stretched my depth of knowledge about that particular age group. And as Pam said, we are going to do some interaction and some using that chat box. So be familiar with that on the right-hand side. So it's May, and I know you can see through to the end of the year and the beginning of summer vacation and treasure. However, it's a perfect time, I think, to begin thinking about what we really ask our children to do each day. So this summer, as you're looking for new ideas and going to professional developments, so I thought this year I'm going to set a reminder on my phone for certain just questions that I want to ponder throughout the summer and remind myself to reflect on. And this is one of them. What are we really asking our kids to do each day? And why are we doing it? And I'm hoping that depth of knowledge will help you in determining where you go with your students next year and how you increase the difficulty level of your classroom and the challenge that you put on your students. So in thinking about what I really hope that you take away today, I really want you to get a better understanding of depth of knowledge, or DOK, as I'm going to refer to it probably a lot this evening. I want you to be able to have a clear view of each of the levels so you can look at what you do. Maybe write down all of the things you do in a week and see what level are you really focusing on? What are your students needing? And where are you currently at? So let's look. I had a question for you that I was thinking, what was the last assignment you gave to your students? It may have been today, it may not have been. But if you will, put in the chat box so that we can look at it later. What I want to do is I want to take some of these assignments and look at them later and let you determine their DOK level and take everything we've learned today and decide what level would that assignment have been, the one you recently did in your classroom. So if you guys would do that for me while we're talking, just throw that in the chat area and we're going to come back to it at the end. So the last assignment that I gave my students, we were working with word families. And I was having them to use the word family and create new words. So that will be one that we can look at. So go ahead and continue putting those in, and we'll keep going. I liked this quote from a book, The Teaching Gap. Teachers must be the primary driving force behind change. You are in the best position to understand the problems your students face and to generate possible solutions. So think about that also while we're going through. You know your kids the best, and you know what they need the best. So where are you going to take them? And I'm hoping that DOK is a great tool for you in getting them to that point. So DOK, what is DOK? DOK is used to measure academic rigor. In 1997, Norman Webb developed DOK to categorize the level of complexity in thinking. Standardized assessments at this time measured how students think about content, and procedures learned that did not measure how deeply students understood or could apply learning in real world concepts. Essentially, The goal of DOK is to establish the context in which students express the depth of learning and the extent of learning. It establishes the setting and scenario or situation in which learning is demonstrated and communicated. So think context rather than cognition. So it's not what the student is expected to do, but rather the situation in which the student expresses or shares their learning. I know that's a lot, and it's sort of maybe a little bit abstract to you right now, but take a look at this graphic of DOK. I like this, and I thought it was a really good illustration. Oops, sorry, I went to the wrong page. To look a little bit more about DOK. So in DOK, the classifications, 1, 2, 3, those levels, 1, 2, 3, 4, it's important to understand that it does not require skill knowledge, or it doesn't take into consideration the background of the students. It's based solely on what the student is being asked to accomplish or to do with the task or assessment. The depth of knowledge classifies assessment items or tasks, not students or student work. So as you're looking at this, I wanted to put this in as I just thought it was a really good visual. But you can see ceiling of assessment. And so this is where I wanted to take, and I wanted to say, okay, what's the difference between Bloom's taxonomy and Webb's depth of knowledge? And the difference is they're very different. They are not the same at all. So the major difference is what's being measured. So Bloom's is better used to measure the instruction, objective, content rigor, while DOK is better to measure the actual assessment or complexity of the task itself. In other words, Bloom's provides the instructional framework, while DOK analyzes the specifics of the assignment. Also, Bloom's taxonomy requires students to master those lower levels before moving on to the next. In contrast, DOK, when measuring an assessment, it has students moving through all the levels. Such as students could recall information, DOK 1, in order to solve the problem, DOK 2 and 3. And if the assessment continues in complexity, the learning may transition into DOK 4. You can also see in the image that Bloom's focuses on verbs to classify what the students are doing, or what the students will do. While in DOK, the verbs are used to examine how deep the student will learn the material or show their learning. Words like explain or analyze have to be considered in context. So think about this. Explain to me where you live. It does not raise the DOK of a simple rote response. The student has to use addresses or landmarks. Even if you were to add something like that, they're still doing nothing more than recalling or reciting. What comes after the verb in DOK is much more important than that verb itself. So in another example, analyze this sentence to decide if commas have been used correctly. Meet by cognitive processing. The student who's been taught the rule for commas is just using the rule. So in DOK, you can see that the verbs are not what you're looking at to determine level. So Bloom's and Webb's DOK are they're assessing completely different, they're talking about completely different things. So I thought this was good, just going back a little bit, continuing with those verbs. So look at this DOK 1, 2, and 3. They all use the word describe. So in 1, you're describing 3 characteristics of metamorphic rocks. So you can see, simple recall. DOK 2, now you have to describe the difference between metamorphic and igneous rocks. Now your cognitive processing is a little bit greater in this because you're looking for the differences in the 2 rocks. DOK 3, describe a model that you might use to represent the relationship that exists within the rock cycle. Now you've got to understand the rock cycle and determine how best to represent it. I had a lot of fun in looking and researching for this, and this is another graphic that I loved. So what do you think? I love giving these types of tasks to my students. Take two completely different things and find a relationship. And this graphic is a great example of that. So somehow you're tasked with relating DOK to TV game shows. So let's go over the different levels first, and then come back to this graphic and see if we agree with it. Once again, the levels, one, so first they're just recalling, reproducing, they're just giving you back the information that you've given them. Level two, they've got to use a bit more skill with the information and understand the concepts more deeply. In level three, they're going to have to think more strategically about the concept in order to complete the task. And in level four, most of the time they're extending their thinking into other applications. What can they do? And it may very well be in something that is in their neighborhood or in their area, something that they are trying to fix, something definitely real world where they're applying their knowledge in a different way. So in level one, it requires recall of information, facts, definitions, terms, performance of a simple process or procedure. Now, remember, tasks can be difficult or time-consuming without having deep knowledge needed to solve them. Also, don't forget, combining level one tasks does not increase complexity, it's just more of the same. And then I really like this fourth one on each of these graphics. There's one correct answer and the correctness is not debatable. It is what it is. So let's look at the DOK levels through our new K3 kindergarten through third grade social studies program called Young Citizens. This is an activity sheet from a first grade lesson. The students are asked to complete this task with an adult. So you can see in the circled activity, students will talk about different people who work at the school and what they do. So basically, students are just relating to you the information that they already know about the workers and their school leaders and their jobs. The task only requires recall. Now, this is an online activity in the kindergarten series. Does it look more complex to you? So the students are going to drag the word to the picture. They can use some words more than once, but in my opinion, the task simply requires basic visual knowledge of the object, seeing if it's in the room, so they're just dragging and dropping into each picture. And when I say that, I really wanted to let you know that DOK1 is not a bad thing or something you should not use, okay? You just definitely want to use multiple levels, and you really want to take it where the students need to go in order to meet their standard. So what level of complexity do they need in order to meet whatever you're trying to accomplish? That's what's really important. So in DOK2, so now this is going to involve the engagement of some mental processing beyond recalling and reproducing a response. Items could require students to make decisions as to how to approach the question or problem in a familiar or typical situation. There's a relationship between ideas, such as compare wars. And actions imply more than one mental or cognitive step or process. So you may have to use more than one process in order to get to the success of the task. So back to young citizens. What do you think about this one? Watch for connections between cause and effect. So more mental processing than just a simple recall. In books you read at home, or on a television show. So in familiar situations, you're applying what you've learned. Cause and effect. When do you see it? Share your thoughts with an adult. And another example, in this grade 2 lesson, students are tasked with determining if a statement is true or false. So they must think a little bit deeper. They've got to determine, is it all true? Is part of it false? What part of it? So they're going to have to evaluate the information a little bit deeper. And then they're asked to rewrite each false statement to make it true. So they have to also then know what the right thing to do is there to change the situation. So I thought this was an example of a DOK2 lesson. It required a little bit more than just defining or using the information. They actually have to apply it into some situations that they're familiar with in their learning. So now 3, getting into some more complex thought. So now the students have to have a deep understanding exhibited through planning, using evidence, definitely more demand for cognitive reasoning. The cognitive demands here are complex and abstract. An assessment item that has more than one possible answer and requires students to justify their response would most likely be a level 3. Questions also, I had circled that. Questions may yield more than one correct answer, which is what we just said. So let's look at some examples. So in this example, this is an activity sheet again, so this is 2 different activity sheets. But in this example, students show they can give directions, listen, and follow directions. Remember also that grade level, if this was given in a kindergarten classroom, the DOK level may be higher than it would be, say, in a higher grade level classroom. So that does matter. The complexity of your students, what they have, matters to the DOK level, matters in determining the DOK level. And then if you look at the right-hand side, what do you think about this? What important taught in every school and why? So there's definitely more than one answer here that you could have. So they've got to evaluate all the subjects, respond and choose one that they think should be taught in every school, and then determine why it was the important one that they picked. So in evaluating that, I thought that was definitely a DOK 3 for this activity level. What about this, grade 1 activity? Making connections. So I'm in Young Citizens, I'm in the teacher mode, so I can see answers already posted. That's why you see that it's highlighted in yellow, which I actually liked for creating this webinar. It's important to make connections between different things you see in here. So they're going to read this. What information am I getting? What have I heard about this before? What does this remind me of? Who do I know that thinks the same or different? Why is it important to make connections? See the best answer below. So they're going to look at those which are stated differently and determine what the answer is. And the answer is C, both. It helps you understand information better and helps you remember information. So maybe that does not make it a level C. But they're also going to have to read the paragraph below and make connections. So now they're having to apply it to this new fresh reading, record their answers, justify their answers, and explain their reasoning in this great activity. And I love this part of Young Citizens. There is the ability to record your answers. So for my age group, kindergarten, it's been fabulous because they can then record their voice and they don't have to type or spell. And I think in our digital age, this ability to do either in young citizens is fabulous because it's what they're used to in the social media and the things that they play at home. So this example of DOK3 came from young citizens and now 4, extended reasoning. So here there's going to be high cognitive demand and it's very complex. So students are expected to make connections, relate ideas within the content and among content areas, select, devise an appropriate approach among many alternatives on how the situation can be solved. So as a teacher, I think I do this every day. I spend a lot of time in DOK4. Due to the complexity of cognitive demand, DOK4 often requires an extended period of time. So these things can span over some time. So this would be more your project. So let's look at an example in young citizens. So this is an activity card. So they're reading about air pollution. At the bottom, what differences do you see in the two photos? How is air pollution a problem for London in 1952? What could have been done to prevent this problem? So I think them thinking about how they could prevent the problem definitely helps raise the DOK level. And then we go to side B. Is any amount of pollution acceptable? So now students are preparing for a debate about pollution. One side will argue from Peyton's stepmother's point of view, and one side will argue from Lena's point of view. In Young Citizens, we have a lot of characters, and Lena is one that spans through the series, and these cartoon characters are great. So the students will already know and be familiar with her and her thoughts and be able to prepare some arguments for both sides. So then they'll pair up and they'll have a debate. So I think this is a great DOK level. It's not something you're going to do in one day for sure. Well, let's look at one more. In Young Citizens, we have at the end of every chapter a project. And so my picture, for some reason, I could not get it to screenshot clearly, but I hope that you can still read it. So there were several pages to this week-long project. Students participate in an environmental fair. They may write local businesses, community leaders, parents, and then they'll create a presentation on the area of environmental concern that they have learned about. So they're really delving deep into an interest that they choose. So they can choose any environmental concern. So I really like that part of student choice because they're going to have some ideas on why they think it is the one that they want to focus on in their area. The presentation should describe ways that people can and do work together to improve the environment on a large scale, and also ways that the students can help and take action. So students work together to create a slogan for their cause, make a poster or another visual display to present what they've learned. And so it's got a whole project checklist, and the students are working on this for several days. So you can see that the DOK of this is definitely a lot higher. Sorry, I got off on the pages. So let's go ahead on. I love this project, and you could even use this in Young Citizens as an assessment to the end rather than the typical end of chapter assessment or end of unit assessment. So let's go back to our graphic on depth of knowledge. So if you will, just really quickly, in any of these DOK levels, can you see why it would be DOK 1, Millionaire in Jeopardy? It's basically they're just spewing out information that they already know, or they're calling a friend to get help. But basically they're just answering. So then in Top Chef, they're actually having to apply their knowledge. They do get a little bit of scaffolding, a little bit of help, and some luck if they don't get voted off, right? So that would be more DOK 4. They are, creating their own dishes and adding some flair to it. So I think that definitely DOK 2, sorry. And then DOK 3, Survivor. So they've got to use some skill to outwit, outplay, and outlast. And then the Apprentice also. They're not getting as much direction in what they're doing, but they have to work towards a goal. And then Shark Tank, DOK 4, they're having to create an entire project, develop a business, basically develop the product, and explain to the funding sources why they should fund their product. So I thought this was a fun example of the DOK levels and may help you in your determining of your levels. So let's go back now and look at some of your activities. So Pam had students analyze a primary source and the author's point of view. What DOK level do you think that would be? It doesn't take long to type DOK 1, 2, 3, 4. DOK 2, yes, it's definitely not just rote recall there because they're analyzing the source from the author's point of view. So they have to know the author's point of view and then apply it in a different situation. So I agree, Pam. I think definitely DOK 2. Kathy made a poplet on a famous person from ancient Rome. So what do you think about basically creating, it sounds like more like a biography on a person? Would that be DOK 1? Another was to analyze strengths and weaknesses in the Articles of the Confederation. So definitely strengths and weaknesses. You are getting a D. You think 3, Pam? Analyze strengths and weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation. I think so. I think that one's a tough one. And we talked before we did the webinar. 2 and 3 can be muted at times. But in my opinion, and everyone may not agree with this, and that's okay, but I think if you extended it to where they're evaluating them in a new or different way, I was thinking maybe relating it to something from today, which of the articles, I'm not sure, because I'm not struggling on this one. I had an idea in my head, and now I'm second guessing myself. Sometimes it's hard to know, what was your idea on, what was your plan in what they're doing, and sometimes that could change it. But I'm thinking DOK 2, and then maybe if you have them apply or use that information in a different way, that maybe it would raise that to DOK 3. What do you think, Kathy? That's where I'm going right now with it. I like this graphic. I like the levels. You can see low cognitive demand, the cognitive demand level. You can see descriptors, expectations, learning experience, the big idea. So I thought this was a really good graphic to add in for you guys to come back to later if you needed it and determine, especially between 2 and 3. I think 1 you pretty much can get. I think 4 is not a problem. I think sometimes between 2 and 3, moving it from a 2 to 3. I think you just have to do something more with it to make it that 3 and support your evidence. Sorry. Okay. So, in review, DOK focuses on complexity of content standards in order to successfully complete a task. It ensures that the objective, the standard, and the level of student demonstration of the standard of learning match. So it's matching what they actually what they're actually required to learn and the task you're giving them. So I think that's what DOK does really for me. It also gives the teachers a tool to check that they're teaching to a level that promotes student achievement. So I think students and teachers have a responsibility in DOK too. So I thought some ways to move into DOK and really using it in the classroom and creating that classroom that is complex is to list and review the activities that you're doing now. So as I said, write down or go through your lesson plan and just write next to it, DOK1, DOK2, and then just see, are you really promoting those higher level thinking skills? You don't have to do DOK4s every week, but every now and then you should push your children, your students, to think bigger. Ask yourself why. Why are you giving them that task? And basically just evaluate your reasoning for the time you have with your students and to make sure that you're using it effectively. Another thing I like to do, which is really fun with kindergartners, is to allow the students to influence the lesson structure. So basically ask them what they want to do. What do they see? How would they use it? So, using new technologies or new different ideas or primary sources, allowing them to choose and have more of a part will naturally, I think, increase the level of complexity. And then feel free. In no way did I mean to make DOK1 sound like it was not important. It's very important. But switch freely between levels. Remember, it's not like balloons. You don't have to go from step to step to step. You can go all around and you can challenge your students and make sure they're learning to the level that is necessary. So just one last question. DOK, has your thinking changed about DOK? What are your takeaways now after all that we've talked about? So through this learning, and I've done a lot with DOK, I've had to evaluate lessons on DOK, and I feel like I learn more and more all the time. But I think the most important thing for me in using DOK, watching webinars, reading things on the internet, has been that I'm thinking more, even 5-year-olds, at what I'm doing with them. Why am I teaching them to type on the computer? Why am I color coding the keyboards and their logins? Why am I trying to challenge them with building things out of Legos, such as a snowman after we read a snowman book, or just various things? Why am I choosing that? And am I raising the level enough or at all for my kids? So thank you, Pam. Definitely reviewing the charts over and over again, interact with them. I think, which was part of, I think that if you take your lesson plans and you go through DOK1, DOK2, and you sort of evaluate them, even slowly or periodically over time, you're just naturally going to become more aware about what you're doing, and then you can add more complexity to your school day. So we'll go ahead. And for additional information, you can email Gothard@socialstudies.com. And I really enjoyed talking with you and to learning more about DOK. And thank you, Kathy. Yes, knowing why you do what your students is incredibly helpful. I'm glad that you could see the value in that. I appreciate, because with Blooms, I thought I would just put the verb out there and throw in an analyze every now and again. But I didn't really think about what I was requiring the students to do. So I appreciate your comment, and I think that that is excellent, and it's a great place to start. So thank you so much, Pam. I really enjoyed this. I'm sorry that was short. I don't know. I may have been talking really fast.
Thank you, Melissa. I'm so glad that you were able to come on tonight and tell us a little bit more about the DOK levels. And I love the idea of taking what you've taught in a day or a week and going through and looking at what levels you were teaching on. I know we had someone on the other day talking, and they said that they had always said, "Oh, yeah, I really believe in teaching students to, use critical thinking." And then when they went back and reviewed some of their lesson plans for critical thinking, they were surprised at how few times they actually allowed that opportunity to students. So I think it's just a good part of reflection. So thank you for encouraging us to do that. Thank you. Thank you guys for attending today. As you close out, you will be prompted to take a little short survey. Please do that for us. Give us some feedback. And Melissa, again, thank you for being with us today.
Thank